Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom. And in this video, we're going to talk about this book. So this is Across the Broken Shore by Amy Trueblood. So this is historical fiction. Not that. That's a cat. Kendall. 13-year-old cat's being annoying. Okay, so this is actually a very good book. This is teen fiction. So this is definitely for the middle school and up crowd. You could probably read it to younger kids, but I'm not sure how much they'd be interested. So this takes place in the 1930s during the time in San Francisco when they are building the Golden Gate Bridge. So it follows this young girl by the name of Wilhelmina. She goes by Willa. She's Catholic, Irish Catholic, I think, because they're redheaded, living in San Francisco. Her parents want her to go and be a nun. Basically, they want her to go to the convent. She's the, I believe sorry, I have a small child and it's almost 8 o'clock at night. So, pardon the yawning. She's 18 years old. So, I think she's the only girl. She has several brothers. And so she promised her parents to go to the convent, but she's starting to have second thoughts. And she's been reading medical books. So one day her brother gets hurt. I think their family owns a pub. So they own a bar. Again, it's the night, or basically, trying to think, it's the 1930s. So Prohibition, I believe, is over by this point. So her family owns a bar. And she tends to him, and they take him to what amounts to be a female doctor. And she's very interested, and she's watching what this woman's doing. And this woman starts mentoring her, and they start working she goes with her to this field hospital of the men who are building the Golden Gate Bridge. And her brothers end up working there. She ends up meeting a young man who's working there, and they start having a friendship. And then there's this shanty town, or Hooverville, as they are called. Again, it's the Great Depression, so they're basically named after the current president who they blame for this. So, and again, this is the 1930s, so it's just prior to World War II. And so she starts visiting this basically, it's what we would now call a homeless, basically, tent setup on government land near this building of the Golden Gate Bridge. So I don't remember which side they're on. I'm not familiar with San Francisco. So I believe they're on the San Francisco side, because I think the suburbs are on the other side. Again, I'm not familiar with San Francisco. So, let alone the San Francisco with the 1930s. But she starts working with this woman and learning about it, and kind of goes through her relationship with this young gentleman I think he's from back east. Him and his cousin are, basically, they go around looking for work. So, which is very, very common at that time. He'd been on his own with his cousins since he was about 14. And she meets his cousin Benny, who's a bit of an alcoholic. Again, I think he's closer to her age. Benny's a little bit closer into his later 20s. Closer to her brother's age. So, and one of her brothers, Patty, is helping her. Basically hide that she's doing this from her parents, who do not want to know she's doing this. They want her to go to the convent. This is their big thing. This is what will make them happy. They're obsessed with her going to the convent, and have been since she was about 12, 13 years old. You do get a little bit of a background of why this is going on. It has to do with her having a fight with her mom when she's about 12, when her mother is like 8 months pregnant, and the baby dies because her mother trips down the stairs. So you get a little bit of this near the end. But it goes through kind of what's going on in San Francisco at this time, how she's working with this one. She bonds with this family in this little shanty town, this woman and her 2 young kids. Eventually they kick them out. Basically the military comes in because this is federal land, because this is on the base where they're building the Golden Gate Bridge. And it's coastal, so it's basically they kick them out. And the woman is pregnant. And she's present for the birth, which I believe is on Christmas. She sneaks out of the house and goes and helps the doctor deliver this woman and her baby. She also interacts with the doctor and her doctor's mentor, and interacts with a girl who was a year ahead of her in school, who run off with her boyfriend. And because, again, abortions are illegal at this time, and this is being filmed in September of 2022. Hopefully, by the time you guys actually see this, we're a little bit further to not having abortions illegal in various states. But again, back to the 1930s, abortion is completely illegal. And this female doctor and her mentor, work with a variety of doctors who secretly help girls like this. But this girl who was, again, Catholic, she used a knitting needle on herself. And I believe she's bleeding to death because her boyfriend got her pregnant and her boyfriend vamoosed. And obviously she's Catholic, and this would ruin her life. And yeah, essentially I believe she does in fact die. Her family's actually relatively well off. And the only all she can think of is she can't be buried in the cemetery because she essentially committed suicide. And again, also tried to give herself an abortion. Again, she didn't go to somebody, though of course Willa's mentor, this female doctor, does tell her that they do. And a lot of times that's what some of these underground doctors have been doing, is they clean up the mess of what happens when they go to these people who are essentially butchers. Which is why abortion needs to be legal in this country in the 2020s. Here we go in there. Because otherwise women are just going to do it anyway. And you end up with situations like this, where this girl used a knitting needle and nearly killed herself, or they go to people who were less than savory to get abortions, and they end up dying or bleeding out or just being mutilated entirely. So yeah, and she learns about this. And then when this happens, I think it's when the birth happens, she's watching her friend, this girl she knew, essentially bleed out. She runs away because she feels it brings up the trauma of her mother having a miscarriage, and she always feels like her parents have blamed her. And so she tries to go back to being part of the convent, and they go meet with the nuns, and it sounds pretty horrible. She's isolated, and she's constantly having to pray, and she has to be subservient, and she can't see her family, and she can't leave the convent for like 5 years. And her brothers end up arguing with her parents, like, do not do this to her. One of her brothers, actually Patty, is deciding to go into the seminary. And he's trying to convince, like, no, you do not need to do this. You belong to be a doctor. He's pretty much told her, it's like, I've seen you. In fact, her other twin brothers have been sworn to synchrony. They've seen her help set this Benny guy's leg, and on her own. And so they've seen her in action. They're like, no, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And eventually it all comes out to her parents and her brothers, along with her, particularly her father also. It's like, yeah, it's like, this isn't right. We shouldn't be forcing this on her. No, the miscarriage was not her fault. She was 12. She was fighting with her mom over lunch. Was sending her to school with leftovers or something. She was a 12-year-old. And her father's like, no, this isn't. He even talks to her mother. It's like, this is not what she wants. She shouldn't be doing this. This is not right for her. And you can always, even when they're conversing with the convent. Her father, she even mentions that her father doesn't seem happy about this. And in fact, her mother doesn't entirely seem happy about this. And that's kind of how it ends, is with the realization. Now, the female doctor that she mentoring died. She was killed by she was killed saving this little boy who Willa had befriended the mother. And the little boy, they had been kicked out, and they'd been put in the orphanage, and the mother had given birth. And she had been put in prison because she had tried to come back to the town, back to San Francisco, because they had thrown her out of the city. But the doctor had been killed because he came to talk to her. This young boy came to talk to her, and she saw him. He was going to get hit by one of the trolleys, and she was killed. And Willa ended up actually talking to her husband. This woman, doctor, was married, and he's like, he's basically trying to give her money to go to college, and she does eventually accept it, and she goes to the funeral. She's with her family, and they go to the funeral of this woman. I can't remember where on earth they bury her, but because she wasn't religious. And eventually that's kind of how it ends, where she realizes that this is the path that she wants to take, and this is, her family accepts this, and it makes them happy. The other thing is, friends of hers, her friend Kara, I don't know if she was meant to go to the convent or her parents just want her to get married. Again, in the 1930s. And she wants to sing, and she has a beautiful voice. So she ends up, right after Christmas, going to New York and actually getting on the chorus line. So, and her parents are actually proud of her. And they talk to Willa's parents. It's like, at first we were shocked and unhappy, but she's happy. And she's in the chorus, and she's making money, and she's happy. And this is what you want for your kid. So that's kind of how it ends. It's a very interesting story. Some of the deaths, it can get a little gruesome because it does talk about deaths of people on Golden Gate Bridge, are real. The doctor is fictional. The shanty, or the Hooverville, is completely fictional. The author talks about what kind of she made up and what's kind of real. It is based off some female doctors. And yes, there was still a lot of prejudice, and it was still a long way to go, but more and more women were going into medical school at this time. So it was becoming slightly more accepted. Not much, but slightly more. But it does talk about this doctor who worked in San Francisco literally until she died, serving a lot of the poor and the women in the community. So that's kind of what this focuses on. But it's this coming of age tale set in the 30s in San Francisco. So it's very, very interesting. You learn about what people are doing in the Catholic community and this medicine at this time, and you get the touch on what's going on with women and abortions and kind of other things that are going on throughout this family dynamic. Another one of her brothers also realizes he wants to go to business school and possibly open his own pubs. The one, Patty, realizes that he wants to be a minister, and then she has two younger twin brothers who actually at one point in time were working on the bridge. And they're just, I think they grow up a little bit. I can't remember how old they are. I believe they're younger than her. So I could be wrong, or just not too much older. So, but it is very interesting. You kind of get a look at San Francisco in the 1930s, what's going on with these poorer communities. Obviously, this is not touching on what's going on with Angel Island, which is a completely different thing. I've mentioned that in a few other books on Chinese culture. I'll probably touch on Angel Island a little bit more at a later date, but it is very, very interesting. This is a very, very good book. I didn't read as much detail as I could because as of right now, this is overdue. I've had it out for too long. Difficult to read when you have a 3-year-old, and this is actually a decently length book. Let's see. And it's about 340 pages. So it's a little over 340 pages. So it's a decently length book. So again, age range 12, maybe, at the youngest, just because difficulty, again, you always know as homeschoolers, you know your kid. And interest level. Again, this is talking about the 1930s. There's a lot of, it can get a little gruesome Again, there's the abortion stuff. There's the giving birth thing. They're talking medical stuff, men dying, falling off the bridge, bloody legs, alcoholism, stuff like that. So it has some more mature content. But again, it is a very, very good book. So I'm thinking 12 at the youngest, just for that mature content. But again, you know your kids. So it's good for if you're homeschoolers, you're talking about the building of the Golden Gate Bridge, you're looking for some historical fiction, talking about San Francisco or life in the 1930s during the Great Depression. So it's kind of a good look at that. It seems very, very well researched, and it is very well written. So that's really the end of this video. Fantastic book. If you like what you see, be sure to like and subscribe. I do books like this. I do younger kids books. I do films. I do a bunch of stuff. I will get more education stuff as goes on. We have a couple of young travel videos. I have as sometime you're seeing this, my daughter will still be 3. I believe, yes. She'll be closer to 3.5, but she's still pretty young. So we're moving into the homeschooling stuff. We're getting there. But again, she's 3. So I think I have some more games because I hopefully will have more by the time you guys see this. And I do have a good, decent backlog. I'm also doing a bunch of book series. When you guys see this, it'll be 2023. So I'm finishing up Tamora Pierce, at least in some aspects. I have her Circle of Magic quartets, both Circle Opens and the Circle of Magic. I have I am doing the Song of the Lioness and the Immortals Quartet. I'm doing the so those are all will be going on this year. The Circle of Magic was already done. That was done, I'm trying to think, it was 2022 or 2021. Maybe 2021. You can check that out. I'm doing the Princess Diaries. That should be going on either right now or be finishing up. Here, I'm doing Guardians of Ga'Hoole as well this year. I'm having a few more. I'm still planning 2023, so I'm nearly done. But I have a lot of stuff. So be sure to check out what I've got. I have a good backlog. I do a lot of films. Some are educational, some are not. Some are just fun. So as well as reviewing some various YouTube channels to mix with some of my themes. So again, like and subscribe. Check out what I got. Leave a positive comment if you have one. Thank you.